Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Society of Schenectady. I am Stephanie Maslanka, she, they pronouns. I join today's worship leader, Tom Comparin, who uses he, him pronouns. Together, we welcome you. We welcome you to this worship service. Welcome to this sanctuary on Zoom. Welcome to this circle. I invite you to find a position of comfort and relaxation. Loosen your shoulders, unclench your hands, your jaw, your toes, everything. If you like, this is a good time to soften your gaze or lightly close your eyes. Take a nice, slow, deep breath in your nose and let it escape your lips with release. Let's do that again a few more times. Slowly, long inhale and release. In and let go. Allow yourself to release on each exhale. If you have something specific you wish to let go of, set that intention now for yourself. Breathe. Release to the universe all of these things if you can. Inhale. And on your exhale, release that which no longer serves you. Breathing in and release all that frustrated you this past week. Breathing in and release fear. Fear for yourself, loved ones, the world. Breathing in and release all the doubt that you carry. Breathing in and release all that burdens you. Now let's have some time of stillness to center and create space for all the beauty the universe holds for us.
Today's reading is a recounting of a true story which I experienced a few years ago. I call it A Tale of Two Grocery Bags, with apologies to Charles Dickens. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was an age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was pre-pandemic. And New York State was moving toward banning plastic grocery bags, but the ban had not yet gone into effect. I was at work at my desk. It was around 10 in the morning, time for a mug of decaf. I headed to our office kitchen, an expansive area embellished with tech company perks, snacks, fancy coffee machines, a soda fountain, etc., all for free. Definitely an upgrade from the simple water cooler and burnt bottom coffee pot of yore. Indeed, a comfortable place for colleagues to share thoughts about work or simply chat about life's small joys and indignities. That day, I walked into a conversation about reusable grocery bags, or rather a lamentation about the difficulty of remembering to bring them with you. I volunteered the successful strategy that I had developed: just keep acquiring more. Eventually, no matter how many you left at home, some will remain in your car. I think I was up to about 50. One colleague, let's call him Peter, seemed skeptical of the whole enterprise. That is, bothering with reusable bags at all. Peter and I have a fair amount in common. Both software developers, both fathers, both active in church, both people who paid attention to current events. Age-wise, I'm older. I've probably got 25 years on him. Smarts-wise, he has the edge, probably 20, 25 IQ points on me. He had likely forgotten more about computers than I would ever know. I normally just use the plastic bags they give you, he shared, although we reuse some to line our garbage cans. Peter was trying to tread lightly. The company leaned liberal politically, both in the official company culture and among the people in our office. I knew from other earlier comments that Peter was more conservative. Employees leaning rightward tended to be cautious in water cooler conversations, but some, like Peter, were alert to opportunities to share from the other side. I could see the urge building in Peter that day, hesitancy and eagerness percolating together. It's not really clear that it benefits the environment, he slipped in. Reusable bags have their own issues. In fact, there was a study in Denmark that concluded that you had to use a cotton shopping bag thousands and thousands of times to get it to pay off environmentally compared to the single-use plastic bags. There were murmured skepticisms, but most of us were now headed back to our desks. I was dubious about his claim. I had heard him express doubts about renewable energy, and the bag comment seemed in line with a certain biased worldview, biased in my eyes at least. But I had read articles discussing the sustainability of clothing choices, and cotton was problematic. Of course, most other options were as well. The best advice seemed to be buy good quality clothes that will last a long time. His comment, however, continued to nag at me. Were there issues with my now vast array of reusable bags? I decided to dig a little deeper. That is why God gave us the internet, isn't it? It took about 2 minutes of searching, and I was reading the original study. Life Cycle Assessment of Grocery Carrier Bags, February 2018, from the Environmental Protection Agency of Denmark, conveniently published in both Danish and English. This study provides the environmental impacts cradle to grave of grocery carrier bags available in Danish supermarkets in 2017. Fascinating, right? As for cotton, well, cotton had a rather poor showing. For climate change criteria, you need to reuse that cotton bag 52 times to match the impact of a single one-use plastic bag. For all environmental indicators, which they considered, you need to reuse it 7,100 times. And that was for conventional cotton. Organic was much worse. Ugh, was Peter correct? Well, I said this is a tale of two grocery bags, but the study rated 13 types. A recycled polyethylene terephthalate, let's just call it a PET, bag required comparable reuse counts of 8 and 84. A polyester PET bag, 2 and 35. A woven polypropylene bag, 5 and 45. These are the types of bags you see here, and I can assure you their reuse counts have far exceeded those numbers. Cotton's high numbers apparently are due to ozone depletion impact, and that has something to do with their water use. I don't really know the details of those facts, but if you're curious, I suspect it'll only take about 3 minutes to find worthwhile information. It's worth noting also that their study did not include related concerns, like the bags blowing up into trees and things like that, or how they accumulate in the oceans. excuse me, and the heartbreaking harm to marine mammals and other wildlife that causes. Our story then is a tale of two truths, of many truths. A story of how the world is actually a big, complicated place. I suspect that certain media outlets, when reporting this study, had cherry-picked facts, cultivating a certain narrative, one that likely confirmed a worldview shared by Peter and many others. But that narrative hadn't felt quite right to me. In this case, I spent the little extra effort necessary to dig deeper, and I learned a lot about the life cycle assessment of grocery carrier bags, and a little something about how a person's worldview and behavior can be shaped or at least confirmed by a half-told truth. My hopes going into the presidential election last November were well-tempered. I had seen this country elect Ronald Reagan twice. With many of you, I had suffered through the 2016 results. After the first disastrous debate, I had methodically sent daily emails urging Joe Biden to drop out. But still, the magnitude and speed of the painful result surprised me. The race was close, but not as close as I had expected. The popular vote this time, no consolation. Why? How? Like some of you, I am a news junkie. I read article after article analyzing the election results. I listened to podcast after podcast. I debated with many of you here during coffee hour. I searched for the answer among the many intriguing contenders. Racist backlash, coastal elitism, muddled democratic messaging, immigration hysteria, Midwest industrial decline. Ah, yes, I would say. Here is an article that explains it all. Until the next day, the next article, the next podcast, equally as insightful as the last, each time a different conclusion. This explanation or that explanation, this analysis or that analysis, this or that or this, on and on. It felt as though my free and responsible search for truth and meaning were leading me down one twisting rabbit hole after another. Have any of you felt this way? How do we humans, make sense of the world? How do we decide what to have for breakfast each morning? How do we explain the self-destructive embrace of cruelty and grift that was the result of our last national election? I have been known to obsess over such questions. Perhaps some of you have as well. But these questions weren't on my mind this spring when I first picked up Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow. I was at the Open Door bookstore, actually, just browsing around. I had one of those reward certificates that was expiring soon, burning a hole in my pocket, when the book just happened to catch my eye. I recall that I had heard the book mentioned a couple of times in recent podcasts. I read the back cover and glanced inside. Library of Congress cataloging. Number 1, thought and thinking. Number 2, decision making. Number 3, intuition. Number 4, reasoning. Perhaps a guide out of the rabbit hole, or perhaps a whirlpool pulling me further down. Kahneman, who passed away last year at age 90, was a psychologist who started his work in the 1960s and won a Nobel Prize in 2002 in economics. His work integrated psychological insights into economics, especially concerning human judgment and decision-making. This book, published in 2011, is an overview of much of his work. As I started reading, I asked my son, a recent dual major in psychology and philosophy, if he knew of the book. And he said with a mischievous glint in his eye, "Oh yeah, we used it in a philosophy class." The main thesis of the book is that there are two systems that drive how we think: System 1 is fast and deliberative, is fast and intuitive and emotional. System 2 is slower, more deliberative, and more logical. If I ask you to solve 2 plus 2, System 1 will quickly respond 4. If asked to solve 17 times 24, System 2 will be called upon. Your eyes will perhaps dilate and roll back. Background noises might distract you. The task feels effortful, and it is. System 2 thinking is literally burning calories. Be cautious of deliberative judgments when your blood sugar is low. We use System 1 to determine the relative distances of objects, to localize the source of a sound, to read text on a slide, to understand simple sentences, or to uncritically embrace a fragmentary yet comforting fact about grocery bags. You will need System 2 to direct your attention toward a specific person in a crowd, to count the number of A's that appear in a body of text, to park in a tight parking space, or to consider an assessment of 13 types of grocery bags. And of course, the systems constantly interact. If System 1 can't make sense of something or is unsure, System 2 steps in, gathering more memories and information and applying more analysis. But as I just mentioned, System 2 thinking is more effortful. We are often lulled into the cognitive ease of System 1, and it can often take motivation and engagement to call on System 2, even to do that 2-minute internet search. Intuitive and deliberative, 2 modes of thought, seems reasonable, but what has this to do with rabbit holes, how we fall in and how we might crawl out? Well, big surprise here. It turns out that these mental systems sometimes make mistakes. Mistakes of predictable kinds, what Kahneman calls biases of intuition. And yes, these biases are related to the unconscious and implicit biases of which we often speak. Along with his colleague of many years, Amos Tversky, Kahneman published in 1974 a seminal academic paper on making judgments. The work described the heuristics, the simplifying shortcuts of intuitive thinking, and then went on to examine 20 biases that arise from these mental shortcuts. Now, talk of biases is common today, but Kahneman reminds us that in the 1970s, social scientists broadly accepted 2 ideas about human nature. First, people are generally rational, and their thinking is normally sound. Second, emotions such as fear, affection, and hatred explain most occasions when people depart from rationality. But their work challenged both assumptions. They documented systematic errors in the thinking of normal people and traced the errors to the design of the machinery of cognition rather than to the corruption of thought by emotion. Free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Systematic errors in the thinking of normal people. Things are so often not as easy or clear-cut as they seem to be. Think fast or perish. Darwinian survival, right? A rustle in the bushes. Is that a lion? Do these flowers grow near fruit trees? Is your expression one of fear or of disgust or of welcome? It is easy to see the great benefits to mental shortcuts, why they would evolve, and just as easy to imagine the paralysis of constant deliberation. If you consider all of your options and possible actions each morning, you will likely never make it out of bed. I was familiar with some of the biases they described. The halo effect, for instance, do you know this one? The tendency to like or dislike everything about a person based on how attractive or charismatic they are. And loss aversion, actually my son taught me this one, the tendency of people to feel the pain of losing something more intensely than the pleasure of gaining something of equal value. Many of the biases were new to me. The availability bias, for instance. This is a mental shortcut that relies on the immediate examples that come to mind when evaluating a topic or making a judgment. Kahneman mentions his own long-held belief that adultery was more common among politicians than among physicians and lawyers. Eventually, he realized that politicians' infidelities are much more likely to be reported, concluding, my intuitive impression could be due entirely to journalists' choices and my reliance on the availability heuristic. In reading this, I was immediately reminded of the disproportionate focus on urban Black families in media coverage of public assistance and drug addiction. What memories are easily available to most Americans when such topics are discussed? Their work discusses the framing effect, how the presentation of information can significantly influence decision making, even when the underlying facts remain the same. Think 95% fat free versus 5% fat. And one of my favorites, overconfidence bias. People tend to overestimate their own abilities, knowledge, and the accuracy of their predictions. I worked in software development. Each project required an estimate of time and effort. They were always underestimated, often comically so. I see some nods and laughter in the audience. And when the next project arrived, our previous miscalculations were all but forgotten, and we confidently peddled our next predictions. Kahneman powerfully and entertainingly, imagine lots of college undergraduates in basement laboratories, describes these and other biases. And although there's much discussion of mental errors, Kahneman reminds us that his work is not meant to denigrate human intelligence. Most of us are healthy most of the time, and most of our judgments and actions are appropriate most of the time, he tells us. We allow ourselves to be guided by impressions and feelings, and the confidence we have in our intuitive beliefs is usually justified, but not always. We are often confident even when we are wrong. In the book's introduction, Kahneman tells us every author has in mind a setting in which readers of his or her work could benefit from having read it. His imagined setting is the proverbial office water cooler, where opinions and gossip are shared. He hopes to enrich the vocabulary that people use when they talk about the judgments of others, the company's new policies, or an investment decision. My hope is to enrich the vocabulary and questioning that we bring to judgments and choices, our own and those of others, around moral issues, social justice issues, the inherent worth of every person, our understanding of ourselves as moral actors and as members of a faith community. Kahneman's work provides insights into some of the mental workings of implicit and unconscious biases. And importantly, he shows that our errors may be rooted not in emotions of hatred or envy or fear, but in the very structures of our thinking. His work calls us to consider what happens when those evolved, helpful structures collide with a modern world so different from our ancestral environments. There were no billboards on the ancient Serengeti. Cave paintings may have been embellished with an extra antelope or two, but no ads for spears or bows were being served up. Although we have no direct window to the long ago, anthropologists' works suggest that lies and deception can be dangerous choices in a tribal community where banishment can quickly become fatal. Our evolved appetites for sugar and salt betray us when processed foods flood our markets. Our evolved appetites for simple, explanatory narratives and quickly retrieved memories betray us when lies and information flood our every waking moment. And now comes AI. So what can we do? How can we improve our search for truth and meaning? How can we detect when our judgments are being twisted? How do we answer the election result puzzle? We can start by being curious, open, and questioning, especially of our own certainty. We can cultivate engagement with difficult or important topics. We can lift up a message often preached here. Either or thinking versus both and thinking. The certainty, the mental ease of either or judgments should be a big red flag waving in front of us. Are we being seduced by an easy System 1 answer? Is some intuitive bias providing a too neat, too familiar, too good to be true answer? Will the environmental cost of cotton bags lull us into praising plastic? Do we need to push beyond System 1? Do we need to move to System 2, to both and thinking, to a place where two or more competing truths can be held at once, to the details of a Danish environmental assessment? And this takes me to a consideration of one final bias, one that is implied in Kahneman's book but not actually described. This bias could be viewed as a combination of many of the others I have discussed. And since it doesn't have a name, let's give it one. How about Tom's certainty bias? Or perhaps the I can outsmart the interdependent web bias. You see, my search for the one correct answer to the election puzzle did finally come to an end. One morning I said to my wife, Carol, I have it figured out. The reason we lost the election is, drum roll please, whatever I say it is today. And tomorrow, if I say something different, that will be the answer. Or at least it'll be as good as any other single answer. For in truth, the question is unanswerable. Despite System 1 urging me to a simple explanatory narrative, despite my objectivity worshiping Western culture upbringing, some questions have no answer. On many smaller individual matters, I have high certainty. There is still much racism in this country. Democratic messaging has been muddled. The Midwest industrial decline is real. And Republicans, given any chance, will transfer wealth to the rich and will demonize the poor. But when all of these smaller, more or less certain truths are tossed together into a giant, dynamic, socio-cultural, political, economic, historical stew, predictions and explanations will always fall short. There are many ways to view our UU 7th principle, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. An environmental reverence, an embrace of something greater than ourselves, a call to community. And now I extol another view, a lesson in humility. Humility before this immense, unmeasurable complexity. We are believers in science, believers in objective reality, believers in fact, and yes, while individual pieces may be knowable, the complex, ever-changing, interdependent world confounds certainty. Some things are unknowable, unanswerable. Perhaps the Buddhist in me knew this all along. The sun will rise tomorrow, of this I am certain. Predicting the weather, well, that will be another matter. Admitting that I can't figure it all out is humbling, but also freeing. If I can stop obsessing over one too big question with no simple answer, I am free, or at least freer, to stumble through everything else. The interdependent web is big. Let us embrace humility. Let us bind humility with openness. Kahneman notes that when we are wrong and confident, an objective observer is more likely to detect our errors than we are. Let us aspire to shun simplistic, reductive judgments. She is racist, he is sexist. The unstated corollary, I am not. These framings are easy and comforting, but as race scholar Ibram Kendi has taught me, shun the general, focus on the specific. Speak not of the unknowable totality of a person, perhaps as unknowable as the interdependent web, but rather of the concrete. Call out racist ideas and racist policies. Acknowledge that racist ideas are ideas. Anyone can produce them or can consume them. I can repeat a racist idea one minute and an anti-racist idea the next. both, and. Both, and. Again and again, we see our smaller individual truths and certainties blur once they are out in the wild of a complex, interconnected, and interdependent world. Consider, for instance, how a college degree can boost one's earnings. Certainly a good for the individual. But what happens when a credential requirements reward system tumbles about in a world rife with inequality and prejudice? A world eager to use a myth of meritocracy to perpetuate oppression and exploitation. What then is our certainty? A shadowy message of blame, infecting self-worth, overfilling available memories. You don't have a college degree. You don't deserve a living wage. But I do not despair. This lack of certainty also means there's opportunity. If some strange conjunction of circumstances could have brought us to suffer the current government, then another set can deliver us. We may not be able to precisely predict or explain these forces, but we know there are forces out there, and we can continue writing UU the Vote postcards and sending text messages and showing up whenever, wherever, however we can. We can find joy and beauty and wonder, and we can live into a transformational celebration of these gifts. Individually, we will make mistakes in judgment, in actions, in belief. But Kahneman tells us that experts can do better because of the effects of prolonged practice. We come together here for comfort and community, but also to be challenged, to face together the types of issues and misunderstandings I have been discussing today, and to practice, to share our pronouns once and again and again. Please don't burden me with nuance, with complexity. Our brains whisper to us, he, she, that is such a nice, easy binary, isn't it? Must I be forced to remember to use they? And heaven forbid a person doesn't use any pronouns. My head is going to explode. Only it doesn't, does it? Nothing explodes except perhaps some outdated System 1 thinking. And you know what? With some practice, with some patience, and some reminding, it all starts to become second nature. Memories, examples, previous flubs all become quickly available. And with speed and ease, it comes to us. Just another 2 + 2 = 4. I put it to you that we Unitarian Universalists proudly proclaim our faith. I know that many of us shy away from such religious language, words such as faith, but are not our principles suffused with faith? We affirm and promote a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Given all we know of mental biases, all we know of the purposeful spread of misinformation, all we know of the complexity of our modern world, is this not a profession of deep faith? Faith that our searches, flawed and incomplete as they may be, can deepen and enrich our lives. Faith that our searches will nourish our minds and our hearts. I have faith that my search will help me grow as a father, as a husband, as a friend, as a Unitarian Universalist. Faith that my search will empower me as a moral actor, a force for peace and justice in the world. Come, let us face uncertainty together, fast and slow. Come, let us search together, intuitive and deliberative. Come, let us practice together in faith and love and compassion. May it be so today and always. Ashe, salam, shalom, namaste, amen, and blessed be. Let us be humble before the power, wonder, and complexity of the interdependent world. Let us be curious and open when confronting our own certainties. Let us resist the untested comforts of others' claims. The easy answer will not always serve us. The courageous realm of both and thinking stretches before us, but effort and engagement may be required to reach those shores. Let us journey there together.